Betsy and Thomas here for the American Intelligence Media. Hey, folks, I wanted to explain the reason that I put the memes as a background. You know what we look like, and you probably don't want to see our faces talking. And I know a lot of you like to just drive to work, or especially if you're a federal worker now going into work, haven't gone to the workplace, you can listen to us. Right. But you don't have to look at us. But I hate to waste the space and not show you some of the best memes that I'm seeing on the internet right now. And look, if you like one, stop, scrape it. You know how to scrape an image? If you don't, learn how to do it, and then post it where you want to post it. So it's like a weapon inside of a weapon. But today I was so excited. I run up to Douglas when he got up. I said, "Oh, honey, I see a plan. I see how Trump is going to be taking the British out. It's masterful." And so before I get ahead of myself and blow everything, what do you want to start on? You want to start talking about the gold, or
whatever you want?
Whatever I want? Okay, well, then this is what I want to talk about. Now, we're not here, just to make sure everybody knows, we're not here to give you the news of the day. If you want to see the news of the day, go over to my Gab site, because I've got it posted. What we're trying to do with our Betsy and Thomas shows is to give you analysis that you might not see listening to mainstream media and some of your alt media players who are not talking about senior executive service. They have no clue that the British are still running America. They don't know what the Pilgrim Society is. So that's not the purpose, is to give you news, is to give you some insight. And old Betsy here had some insight. Now, the first thing, let's stack it up. We're going to have our 250th American anniversary next year, 2026, and Trump has an executive order, and he wants it to be a big deal. And it should be 250 years from people thinking that we were free from Britain. But of course we weren't. And we all know that in our cat community. The British never let go. And we may have thought that we were free, but then in 1913, and Trump keeps saying this, 1913, he wants you to focus on that date. That's when the Federal Reserve Central Bank came in and scooped up America for the Pilgrim Society, and then other things happened. So we haven't really been true to our Constitution and our cause for a very long time. Okay, so we're going to have this 250th anniversary, and I'm saying that it's truly going to be an anniversary to remember, because it is going to be where it's very apparent that America has defeated Britain. But it's not going to be in an all-out war that your normies will figure out. No, it's happening in invisible ways. So, for example, Trump says he'll do deals with individual countries in Europe, but not the European Union. Oh, precisely. So that means that each country operates as a sovereign nation to have a relationship with the United States as a sovereign nation. That isolates the United Kingdom and the Pilgrim Society from controlling the European Union and all the stuff that they're doing. So that's great. But as that isolates Britain in that way, I also see an attack on the City of London gold, which Douglas is going to talk about in just a second. And that's going to take funds from inside of Britain. And then you already have the NGOs that have been defunded. Well, a lot of that money winds up in the king's coffers. So that's going to dry up. A lot of things are happening. What he's doing, he's softening them up for the kill. And they don't even know that they are in his sight lines. But they are, and the Pilgrim Society is going down. And my final statement on this is, I'll bet you that the American people will never realize that we just now won the war against Britain.
Well, I just don't know where to start. Let's start 8 stories below the City of London, where the vaults are that hold 88,000 tons, 8,100 tons of gold in the Rothschild gold bullion vault, which the Bank of England puts their piddly little 310 tons in that vault. But that vault is controlled by a group called the London Bullion Market Association. We have outed them. We've done exposés on them, showed you how it's so false, where we had the head of the London Bullion Market Association.
That's Michael Farmer, yeah. Candace Owens' father-in-law.
Yeah. And he's the one who took the gold from Enron, and this guy is as corrupt as can be. Matter of fact, he was in charge of the Intercontinental Exchange for a while, I believe, and then which is basically our stock market. How is it that a Brit owns the New York Stock Exchange, or owns it, runs it, and then said it wasn't enough money for him, so he sold it to some criminals in Sweden. Anyway, they're in that vault where the Queen walks through. The Queen inspects her couple little gold bullion bars every once in a while. Now it's the King. King Fatfingers probably goes down there and fondles the gold bullion bars. But we have the head of the London Bullion Market Association, the LBMA, saying that there are 36,000 hypothecated paper notes on every ounce that they have.
I want you to just realize 36,000 notes on one coin. And if a gold coin right now is going, well, let's just say for $2,000, you take that, what was it, 36,000 times 2,000, and that's the value of your gold coin.
Now, if somebody actually explains this to Trump, but you see, we don't care. Yeah, if Trump, if he understands this, it would be so easy to crash the British economy. But the reason this came up is because today and in the last few weeks, the London Bullion Market Association has had trouble on delivering anyone asking to have their gold. Now, we've explained why it makes me laugh when we say that, because in general, people who have gold don't have a little bit of gold. They don't go to the LBMA and put in a few gold coins or even a few sleeves of coins. No, that's where the big money is. It's in huge volume. And the only other place that has that much gold, actually, technically, yeah, we have 8,100 tons of gold, and the Queen only has, or the King only has 310. But the Rothschilds have 8,600 tons of gold in their vault that nobody ever gets out of that vault. That vault is supposedly the assets behind the Bank of England, the assets behind everything, all gold exchanges. That's the largest gold holding in the world, and our Federal Reserve is the second, and the whole thing is a big scam. Okay, that gold it's never moved, because when you move it, it's a huge expense. But then you have to have it assessed. That's a huge expense. And then you have to have it withdrawn. That's a huge expense. So unless you got a whole lot of gold in there, you're not going to be withdrawing it. So when people went to withdraw some of their gold, they were said, no, you have to wait 4 to 6 to 8 weeks. And so this economic theorist that was doing a beautiful presentation on this was saying this could be the end of the British themselves, their economy. Now, yes, it might end the Bank of England, and that's what he said, because he's a very smart guy. Will it end the Rothschild control and the City of London control of the world? They used to set the gold and silver by their telephone in the Rothschild office. Okay, so when you say Bank of England, that's just a tiny subsidiary of what the Rothschilds have been doing with the central banks all over the world, and especially with the manipulation of gold, silver, and interest rates between banks, we'll call it. So I don't have to explain that. But anyway, they ruled the world, and they still do. Now, it's been shifted around to Michael Farmer and others to hold the gold manipulation. It's at J.P. Morgan, and the gold is manipulated through J.P. Morgan Chase and through HSBC. Now, that's Hong Kong, Shanghai banking, whatever it's called, Central or whatever it's called. Anyway, HSBC, one of the largest banks in the world. These are the people who started pulling their money out and moving. Now, strangely enough, these are British banks from inception, even though they were in China and in America in some cases. They're moving their gold out. It's not that much. It's, for The manipulation of currency exchange, they moved 46 tons to America, and he doesn't understand that, the person who was speaking. Well, that's what always happens when there's a presidential change or a change in the real leadership. So when it changed from one Democrat to another, no, they don't do that. But it changes to a Republican. They did it before when Trump was elected. So what happens is the Fed calls back their debt from other countries for the currency exchange to balance the sheets, right? Well, I'm sorry. Look at that. Britain only had 310 and 46 is just left. They're not doing very well. Plus, their economy is completely stagnant. So basically, because of the fantastic Arctic vortex that just hit Britain and is letting them know once again, get ready, put on those old Viking fur coats that you used to have because the ice age is coming. And that's another reason why all of a sudden Greenland is important. Well, yeah, when all the snow melts off of it, it's going to be very nice, useful land, isn't it? And anyways, Betsy has said yesterday, I totally vote for having a American Siberia at the top of Greenland. I think it's a great idea. And it's hysterical. Denmark wants to get mad and threaten Trump. That's hysterical. There's only like 50 million people who live on the whole island. Well, it's not an island, but the land mass of Greenland per se, and it's all that it encompasses is that's nothing. That's a city in America. And Germany, who has the second largest amount of gold in their gold reserves, 3,000 tons instead of us, who have 8,100 tons. They cause all that trouble. They're about as big as one of our states. Okay, let's remember what we're dealing with here. Nobody can stand up to the size that Britain allowed America to become as their economic and military branch.
And that's why the balkanization of Europe is so important for us to take down this beast. So Denmark's out there going, oh, you can't have Greenland. Well, it's a territory. It has a special relationship with Denmark, but it's not the country of Denmark. And those people can vote for what they want to vote for. But what does Denmark think? That NATO or the European Union that's funded by the United States of America is going to go and help them out? I've got news. This big wake-up call for all of you turkey butts out there. And NATO is not going to come to anybody's rescue, because if anyone moves in the wrong direction, NATO will be another one that is defunded, just like all these NGOs. Now, we're seeing a lot of fallout, and I want to tell you what I'm seeing on the ground. You might not see this in your world, but we have cats out there who are inside the federal government. They're these workers. Now, you've got two sets of workers, so I've got to make this clear as I explain what's going on. You have the senior executive service. Their management, they're separate. They don't have a contract like the general civilians, civil service has. They have a contract, okay? And so they're a union. And then when they saw that Trump, one of his first EOs, was targeting the senior executive service, oh my gosh, they all got upset. And I know this because I'm hearing stories from people who are actually working for the federal government, and they're telling me what's going on. So they got a little nervous, but their union settled them down and said, don't worry about it. We have a contract. He's not going to do to you what he's doing with SES. But then Trump comes out and says, okay, well, you can resign. We'll let you resign. So they have until just next week. I don't want to date this video, but they have a week or so, 10 days, to send their resignations in. All they have to do is send the email back that says resign, and they're resigned. And they can continue, quote unquote, to work, which we know they're really not doing because they don't show up at the office. But you'll get your pay through September 30th. Sounds like a pretty good deal. But in the interim, these civil servants all got together with their union, and they said, no way, Trump is forcing us out. We're going to stand strong. We're not leaving. We're going to stay right here. Well, holy moly, the next thing you knew, Trump is saying in his own words, if you don't show up at work, you're fired. And they're freaking out because they never dreamt that the president would do this. But it gets even worse because what's happening is that the system is beginning to fragment. So there are people inside the government that are fearful that they won't have a job, and so they're leaving. But then that's putting pressure on the managers who have now more people to manage, and they know they're not going to get any new people in. So if they're managers that have been there for 20 years or something, they're going to take an early retirement or they're going to resign. They're going to do whatever in their financial best interest. And then some of these people during this COVID thing, they either moved further away because they thought this work at home thing would be permanent, or the offices that they are assigned to for their payroll purposes has been closed since all of this happened. So now they live way out. They have to come into the office, and now it's a great inconvenience. So it's all falling apart. And what you're seeing managers quitting or resigning. You're seeing workers resigning. Like how about the group, the 1,500 that said, no, thank you, we don't want to be sent to the southern border, the IRS agents that were going to be sent to the border. So you won't see the free fall in our federal government, but it is happening. The news is not going to report it.
Yeah, so I think it's going to be no longer Great Britain. It'll be Make Great Britain Not Great Again, because Great Britain isn't united with the European Union. And, that's right, the countries of Europe are not united with the European Union because the attempted Soros takeover of the European Union Central Bank failed. And so what did he do? He brought in the invaders. And remember, after all the countries were overwhelmed, what did Soros say? I will get them out, but it's going to cost you this amount of money every year. Let's remember, he brought them over. Those ships were always traced back to him. He was the money behind the NGOs who brought the migrants in. He's the money behind the Chicago Mafia that has continued, probably the largest source of money to bring them across the American southern border. And let's look at Trump. They're really upset that the Catholic agencies, who basically especially Lutheran agencies and other Christian agencies who supposedly place asylum victims who are not asylum victims, they lost all their money overnight. Well, that's okay because they always lose their clients too. And this has been proven over. We've done exposés on this. These people who come in and then these fake religious organizations get paid, these NGOs get paid to place these people. And then 1 year later, when Trump came in, remember, all this is a repeat of his first administration. We called it the rats were jumping off the burning ship. And we remember when he went to NATO and said, okay, y'all owe me all this money. And a couple countries started to pay and the others didn't. Germany especially didn't. And now we have the same thing. And so we now have, who knows, perhaps tens of thousands of troops in Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania. We have troops in Poland, NATO troops, and they are from Germany, from France, and of course, Polish troops, and other troops amassing. You have missiles on the border. They're begging for a war with Russia, okay? Why? Because Germany has always had a backdoor relationship with Russia. They are Nord Stream 1 and 2. They brought the oil in from Russia, jacked through Turkmenistan and other places. I'm being a little generalized here, but they brought it into Germany, and then Germany provided 68% of the oil in Europe for a long time from those. And then all of a sudden that's turned off. All of a sudden Ukraine turns off all four of the pipelines going off through their country, which they're making $4.5 billion from. They go into debt with Putin for $5-6 billion. They go into debt with us for oil for $27 billion, and then a war starts. No, that wasn't a war. That was British invasion to try to cover up the fact that Britain, when they went into the EU, made a huge mistake, but when they came out, they made an even bigger mistake because then Trump started to do deals with individual nations. And now he's going to do that again. Most of the European nations and the European Union do not. They have huge differences with each other now. It's not going to continue. But going back to why Trump is going to say, you're not paying your 3% now to NATO. And you're taking the money, and what have they done with it? They amassed an army. Germany has an army. So what if we said Colorado had an army of 280,000 standing troops? What would you do? You'd say, well, that's insane. What would you do if you found out that France had a standing army of 180,000 troops, and that's just their standing army for NATO? You'd say, wait a second, these guys, I didn't check out what Britain is, but Britain always offers just a few troops, and they're always first one in and last one out, because why? They started the war, and it was for some economic or otherwise gain. And so what we're seeing here is that Trump is going to come in and say, you didn't pay your 3%, I'm not going to be part of NATO anymore. This is good, and when that happens, I will be totally on his team. And when he pulls us out of all payments to the United Nations, good. The 2 million people that he just said you can have an early buyout, what was that? Okay, only one message comes to me from that, and the rest just makes me laugh. That means those are 2 million non-essential employees. There's 4.5 million federal employees underneath Trump, including the National Guard and the military, right? It's at least 2 million. I was going to say the 2 million, there's more than that. But anyway, the point is most of them don't do anything anyway. And if there's no IRS, that takes out a huge swath. If there's no Homeland Security, that's a huge swath. With the reorganization of the National Security Council, that takes out a huge swath. He's taking out possibly millions of jobs that are not essential.
Yeah, and the wave, it's going to create a wave of other people leaving, like I said, because their structure is falling apart. So the managers don't want to be left with all this work. Plus, they have to drive in to work for the first time. And the other thing is with the NGOs and the halt on foundation monies for 90 days. I mean, these organizations will be flopping dead by 90 days. They probably don't have a lot of reserves. And but what does that mean to you on the ground? Well, there may be people in your neighborhood. Let's just take if you live outside of Washington, D.C. Maybe your husband works for the Department of Justice, and he was on the second floor. And was that the floor that all got fired? And you work over at some foundation that lives off the government teat, and now it's all dried up. And you've got 2 new cars, your nice Alexandria home, your children are in private school, and I'm seeing these people freaking out. They're like going, what do we do? We don't know any other work. We just know our government work. Well, you know what I have to say to them? Why don't you pick up a job at 7-Eleven? Then we won't need all these H-1Bs. Or how about the chicken processing plants where the parking lots are empty now because everybody's leaving for the border? Oh, we have plenty of jobs. So it's just not going to be the job you had living off the taxpayers. That also affects university funding, because the other executive order that was exciting to see is there's no more DEI stuff, period. That's it. And the universities have to stop it, or the federal government will stop funding to the universities, and they need that funding. And then you're also going to see changes in HR departments all across the country, because the DEI worship cult has now come to an end. Expect that the whole HR department is turned upside down. Now, a lot of these HRs were being supported by the Biden regime with additional money. So they were spending that money on elaborate programming to get everybody buying into this early form of communism, DEI. That's going to go away and change. So there could be even more unemployed people out there. It's very exciting. I think that we're going to win, and it's just going to collapse from within.
Yes, all the other nations that hate America wanted us to collapse from within, and they wanted us to collapse because of the degradation of morality and new mores that made good evil and evil good. And it's happened, and that propaganda then became believed, and so much so that people will defend lies and propaganda that are based upon somebody just telling them something. I mean, it is just incredible. I don't think that there's one single area right now in America that has not been completely disturbed by the ultimate what do they call it? Disruptor. That's the word I was looking for. I'm thinking of a giant wrecking ball. And this happened the first time. But then what happened? The deep state won. On the deep state by the globalists and shadow government right here in the SES, and the British didn't lose anything. And then they got it all back as soon as Biden came into power. So we need to just sever our relationship with Britain and Five Eyes. That's how wars start. And we can reconstruct new relationships with every nation individually. Trump has time. He will take the time to personally make deals with every one of these nations if necessary. It's obvious. What did you say? He was just on the phone for an hour and a half with the head of GM last night?
Oh, yeah, Mary Barara was on the phone with Trump for an hour and a half explaining why GM was arranged the way it was around the EVs and how it was all going to change. Well, the conservatives and the patriots in that audience were getting a blast out of it because they realized Barrera doesn't really understand what Trump's getting ready to do to her.
Okay, so everyone who says there's code words here, okay? When you say EV, you say China as the superpower dominating America. That's what you say. China went out, and with all the money they got from us, because 51% of our manufacturing was done by China, and still is, and the Trump tariffs put on him were dropped, and now again, China is going straight down in their economy. Same thing with Russia, same thing with Britain. They say it's stagnant. It's not stagnant. They're not growing at all. They can't even walk their streets. They call gang rape groups groomers and let them off. Okay, these people have a government that is no longer defending anybody. It's just complete, absolute, exactly what you would expect. Marxist chaos, okay? Because why? All isms were incubated in the city of London on top of that gold. And that gold is Babylonian, demon-possessed, Radonite gold that has gone through the hands of the bankers that we have told you the story about many, many times. You can find in Truth History, which is, of course, on ourspirit.com. When you look up The Truth Will Set You Free, you can look up all of that stuff. And so this stuff is so old hat for, those of you who keep up with everything. I have to apologize, but I always try to make it current. The current Chinese fake gold is the following. They just sold billions of dollars. I forget, 80 some billions of dollars in fake gold to their own people because they told them that they had discovered a gold mine that got 1,000 tons of gold in China. Ain't no such mine. That happens every few years. 4 years ago, same exact story. And what really happened? Then the gold assessors for the international gold assessors went there and said, there's 7,000 tons of gold you want to add to your 2,300 tons of gold in your reserves that will then make you have more gold than America so you can take over the world currency. It's all fake. But it had already been sold through the Shanghai gold bullion market and the Canadian market and the London bullion market association. These people sell fake gold when they sell real gold. So if you get gold delivered, don't believe it's gold, especially if it's in bullion. And then if you get a note and you say in your 401k you got gold in your 401k, no, you don't. You have a piece of paper that has to go through 10 brokers to finally get to anything of wealth, and 36,000 other people are waiting for that piece of gold.
Not even a piece of paper. It's a digital recognition that you have something. It'll just go poof. People, you got to have your precious metals in hand, but we've already lectured that to you. But do you realize with that simple math that there are 36,000 contracts written on an ounce of gold? You do the math. If the gold is anywhere from $2,000 to $3,000 right now, then we're talking about at least $72,000 per piece of gold. You got an ounce? That's $72,000 in the current inflated dollars. And of course, things are going to shift as our economy and our money does. But the value of gold is still going to be there. So cats, if you haven't gone out and picked up some precious metals for yourself, this would be a great time because you're never going to see prices this low.
The Nova Scotia Gold, which had the largest gold reserves besides the Fed in America, and which the Fed holds a lot of the money that people think is in Fort Knox, okay, and it's just absolutely ridiculous. Anyway, one of the towers, the tower next to the Twin Tower, had the most secure vault in the whole friggin' world there, right? What happened to that gold? Disappeared. Okay, the Fed gold, where is it? Oh, same place, the DTCC, that the Depositors Trust Corporation, had all of the bearer bonds for gold and all of the paper money all in a vault. Where? Same place, right down the street in Manhattan.
Water Street.
On Water Street, which has flooded. It's like 70, 80 feet below sea level. You think that gold's not going to disappear? How about all the gold in Kuwait? Remember when Kuwait... Oh, this is a beautiful story. The reason we went into Iraq wasn't Iraq. It was because they said Iraq set up the explosions on oil wells in Kuwait. Completely false. That was a Texas company, George Bush's friend, who did that. And when they went off, we went in and we didn't extinguish them because another friend of George Bush was the only one allowed to put them out. So remember how we darkened the skies for how long? That was so they could get the gold out of Kuwait, right? That's what it was all about. Huge, because Kuwait bought gold, okay? Because in the old days when gold was no longer part of anybody's currency, it was for whoever had the highest dollar, and Kuwait bought it all, and then we stole the gold. There's movies made about this. There's so many witnesses to this, it's ridiculous. And the Kuwaiti people, the richest people in the world per capita, went to London and were pissed off that their bank machines, their money machines, would only give them $10,000 a day, because that was really cutting into their lifestyle. Okay, this is what we're talking about. Fake. The gold represents something. What does it represent? For Kuwait, it represents stealing the gold from the countries that we did fight against because they got mad that Kuwait charged them too much money to put oils on ships in Kuwait. All the oil went through Kuwait, right? So anyway, if you look at what was really going on, it's absolutely shocking, the stupidity that they think the people watching have. It's just absolutely incredible. So anyway, anything else you want to talk about? Plasma's invisible. Most of the stuff you see in outer space, you don't see it. It's invisible. And that's the reason these plasma balls coming down, and this has now been documented. I have it all in this book I'm working on, which is going to be, as long as Betsy allows me it to be, a free book for anybody who wants it, because this is desperate. Just a ebook, someone just can get this information. Why? It's going to change your life. It's like listening to the telepathy tapes. But you see, to me, that was just validation of my life. This plasma stuff, unfortunately, it's like all these exposés that we do for intelligence reports. It comes out to say the first thing they used it for? Weapons. What do they do when they see it? Shoot at it. They try to bomb it. They try to go up there and mess it up. That's what HAARP was about, sending up nanoparticles into an area where they knew that dust is what creates plasmoids. So they created evil plasmoids and then energized them with HAARP and extremely low and extremely high frequency bombardment of our atmosphere. And then they're surprised they come down and chase the drones that they put up all around the military stations the other day. Remember the New Jersey drones? No, that was every military base U.S. military base in the world had drones around it for like a couple of weeks. Why? That was their new defense system. But it pissed off the plasmoids, so they came down and then they got the jets chasing them. And now you have ChatGPT and everything else creating the most incredible fake things. But the real things, okay, all you have to do is read this thing that I'm going to give you all. And when you read it, you go, oh, they're called thunderstorm divers. So they always show up around thunderstorms. That's why I go outside when there's a thunderstorm. I want to see ball plasma up there in the clouds. We're coming down to Earth. I want to invite it down to Earth. Because why? It's like the vehicle that higher beings use to come into this realm to just go ripping through it, because it can pass through anything. Remember, they pass right through the jets that are chasing it. The jet's going as fast as it can, the ball stops. The jet goes through it, nothing happens. But when it bumps into another plasmoid, it explodes and makes a huge, long comet tail. You saw all those ones above the LA fires? Those are all explained in great detail because they've observed them, they've studied them, but no one's ever caught one. But at the same time, they make this is the number one thing going on in scientific labs right now, along with graphene oxide, which gets micro. They want to get macro, so they want to put a sun on the Earth. And so they need magnetohydrodynamic plasma containment to have fusion, change one substance into another without an explosion. Well, they're getting very close. They actually say that they've had a few, 1,000 seconds of sustained fusion reaction. Well, yeah, good luck with that, folks. You're pretty stupid to think you can even do that. What you should be doing is studying these phenomena instead of sending garbage up there or trying to manipulate it through military means. It's like when they found out there was ozone and there were Van Allen belts, they exploded 2 atomic bombs above the Antarctic thinking, let's see what happens. These are the kind of stupid people they are. But anyway, they use this in medicine. They use it everywhere in industry. You name it. Every technical science uses plasma right now, including supersonic missiles now are admitting they have plasma shields in the front or they couldn't fly that fast. They're now admitting that's how they get through the exosphere. They're admitting, finally that plasma, which has been a hidden science used only by the military, magnetohydrodynamic generators have been used in every nuclear power plant since their inception, but no one knows it. They've been used everywhere. So, folks, the point is it's invisible. It's light. And everywhere in your body, the same thing that happens out in space where hydrogen peroxide meets ozone, it creates water and the oxygen we breathe. And it happens in the human body in certain white blood cells that go around that are the emergency alarm system, just discovered the other day. The emergency alarm system sends this certain type of white blood cell there, and what jumps out? Hydrogen peroxide, and it attacks the pathogen. Now, you know what hydrogen peroxide does when you put it on a wound and there's any infection in it, right? Well, that's what it does to bacteria, bad bacteria. And at the same time, it creates ozone. Well, both of those things are supposed to be absolutely toxic to mankind, but there's acids created in the human body in the same way. But anyway, the same thing happening in the atmosphere that brings in cosmic helium and hydrogen and uses hydrogen peroxide and ozone to create our water and our air happens in our blood. It happens in our human body. It's the same exact phenomena. Do you think science could have focused on this at all, whatsoever, at all, since they invented themselves in 1840 as really the demon-possessed Ahrimanic religious scientism that they are? No, they don't want any of that. The first time they saw a plasmoid, what did they do? Attacked it. And then for a long time, their standing order was turn the camera away. Play like it's not there. Because they can't catch one because it's not material. It's the substance of the universe. You know that 99.9% of the universe is plasma, but do you realize that most of it is in a state of what they call darkness? You can't see it. They call it dust clouds. They call it dark matter. They call it the boson, Higgs, whatever. No, they invent names for stupidity. Rudolf Steiner clearly says that atoms only happen down here on Earth. And what system do they follow? The exact system that the Earth itself, as a globe, follows. And that's what I'm describing to you. The magnetopause, the Van Allen belts, the plasma coming from the sun, magnetic flux tubes and cables and all this stuff that I'm always going on and on about. That is literally the being of the sun giving us what we need to live. But if you take it too early, it'll fry you up as ultraviolet, X-ray, gamma ray. But in the future, it will be our food. So if they would stop messing around and start trying to be friendly with these plasmoids, they might teach them a whole lot.
Well, when I look at all this, what I see is a general belief in material science, or I should say the belief in material science is fading away. It's falling apart because you can't take the ideas and the concepts and even the phenomena of plasma or telepathy or these old world civilizations that we're now discovering and put them in that materialistic science basket anymore.
Absolutely, because why? We have a cosmology. Spiritual science is a Christian cosmology that shows where you came from, where you are, where you're going. And literally, you can look at the archetypes, the 9 hierarchies, the Trinity, and the elemental beings, and all of these different heterogenic manifestations of what people would normally call dimensions, but not, it's partially dimensions. Anyway, it's a new paradigm, right? Now, if you say to science, you need a new paradigm, you know what they'd say to you? Well, that's just 20 cents. They don't have a paradigm. There is no accepted theory of everything. Einstein's relativity theory, half of the scientists are for it, half of them are against it. Big Bang, half of them will kill someone over the issue, and the other half of them laugh at them and point fingers. There's no science that agreed. No, and what I tell you is just simply data. You can do with it what you want. You agree this whole book, it's 100 pages on plasma. I'm not going to tell you exactly what it is, except I will tell you, but you won't understand it. It's chemical ether activated in the warmth sphere, where it's not really, terribly happy to be there. That's supposed to be something happening in the exosphere, where it gets between, 3,000 to 5,000 degrees. And so that's why up there, these plasmoids zoom all around, but they come down. They come down into colder spheres. They come out into the other parts of the ionosphere, the mesosphere, the stratosphere. They come down into our troposphere. They come down into our atmosphere and zoom around, and you can see them. And what are you going to do? Change your paradigm. What are you going to do when you listen to the telepathy tapes? You're going to change your paradigm. And then you're going to say, wait, there's a reason why we don't know this stuff. You want to know why we don't know about telepathy? I've said this many times before. Because if people could see your thoughts, they'd probably choke you to death, because you can't control them, and those aren't even thoughts. Those are animal instincts and desires and personal selfishness and just terrible stuff. And your thoughts, many people's thoughts, I can't look at it. It's disgusting. Now, if you have an angel thinking through you, it looks like you have wings. So it's all a matter of perception. It's all a matter of what it is that you're looking for that you will see. So when you're talking about these things, what I'm looking at is it's exactly what I had predicted. Last May, I said, and so did Tyla, Betsy that is, said something's happened. Something opened. Something's changed. We've turned a corner. As a matter of fact, we were saying what some of the old folks used to call, what is it that she calls it, the shift. The shift has come. And I'm like, well, I feel it. And that was before Trump got elected. Mm-hmm. So I think he's part of this, knew this shift is coming, and so he prepared this attack on all fronts. And it's just absolutely confusing the entire federal government, which is very, very good. That's what he needs to do. He needs to throw every one of them off balance like they threw him off balance, right? And then he can resort afterwards, and it'll shake it all out, as they call it. Set the boat on fire, watch the rats jump off. So with plasma, in the human body, we have a magnetohydrodynamic generator already, and that's what science is trying to create. Why? Because they don't know that the human heart is a sun, and it uses the same exact plasmic principles, but it's cold plasma. Now, they know there's cold plasma, but they don't understand the ramifications of it. Then it also appears in the head, and it also appears in the belly. And the one in the belly, they aren't going to understand for a long time. The one in the heart, hello, I've been explaining this. It's in our book. We have been explaining it in the heart as a supersensible organ of perception. In all of our books, it's when Tyla put it in her book. You can read it there, So are we the first ones to notice this? No, the ancients noticed this. They described it. We go back, get their words, describe it for you, and bring it up to modern date, and then point out that vortex, here's the big one. This is the one I was yelling about the other night. She might have been talking about. I realized that we are about the only people who talk about the 4 vortex rings in the heart. The heart vortex rings. You can look it up. It'll blow your mind. They're frequencies. I used to think they were flow forms. They're plasma toruses. Because a plasma will turn first into a double helix that looks like DNA, and then it'll make a torus, and then it will make a ball. And basically, we are replicating that in different parts of our body. So there is, for instance, between this, when the sperm enters the ovum at conception, the tail of the sperm drops off, which is kind of cometary. No one can even explain what that tail is. It's actually a form of plasma. And when the sperm enters the ovum, what happens? A flash of light, a big, bright flash of light. Well, that's what plasma is. And if you notice, when plasma's in the sky, two of them bump into each other. Sometimes one of them glows really, really big and the other one disappears. And then it sits there for a while, and then little babies come out. Or the two of them go together, and then they separate in two, and then they each drop babies. It's just amazing. You're watching geomagnetic, electrostatic, natural electromagnetism, life ether and plasma. You're watching their interaction. That's what happens in our body. And these filaments that a plasma filament out of every black hole, supermassive black hole in the world, in the galaxy, in the universe, they can explain it. It's either a black hole which is sucking up stars and they don't understand that, or where they go, and then it changes and it's breathing in, and then it breathes out and creates a relativistic jet, or what's called an ion jet. That ion jet, they now know that there's a visible part that sometimes can go out 1,000,000 times the size of that entire galaxy. And part of the time it's invisible. And now they know. And so when you now look at the computer-generated pictures of the universe, it looks like a bunch of cables and strings, like the magnetic cables and strings that come into the Earth from the sun. And that's exactly what the universe is. So the black holes suck up the stars, keep it on their surface, and then send them out to these supercharged ion jets. And so a black hole, supermassive black hole in the middle of every galaxy, has a breathing in and out. Do you think science is ever going to apply human breath, breathing in and out, to these processes? No, they won't. But we can, and when we see one of these little babies come out of the sky, if it's coming to see you because they respond to thinking, they respond to singing, they especially respond to high whistles and clicking, like the aurora chorus, which you can hear the aurora borealis, that's their language. So you can draw one of these things to you. But remember, it's not an angel. It's not your guardian angel. It's not God. It is a natural force that is there to create oxygen and water on the Earth that goes through this fantastic electromagnetic processes that go up and down through all the different atmospheres, all the way out to the exosphere, and then into the magnetically into the plasmopause, the magnetopause, out into the Van Allen belts and all the radiation around the Earth that protects us. So these are the protective shields given to us from the time that we were created, and this is showing us a natural process of the evolution and incubation of inorganic particles and organic particles. It's a natural process. Now, I have said all along that one day, for those of us who have been harvested by Christ, and if you have, you know it, you're going to be saved by one of these balls because it's going to be sent down as a chariot for you. Now, I know that sounds crazy, but I'm talking about over a huge period of time. That the vision of Ezekiel, you will have that experience. And what will you be looking at? You'll be looking at the fact that you yourself are becoming more plasma-like, and therefore you can integrate into a plasma ball, which is, by the way, not matter and not atomic matter. These are separated. The protons, the electrons and protons are separated, and one's positive, one's negative, but then they're in this active nascent form of genesis, so that scientists can actually observe these as they transform particles of dust from one substance into another through spectrography. They can look through them because they're mostly light. But they can pass through metal, they can pass through a wall, they can pass through anything. So basically, in the process of ascension, plasma is involved, but most of the time it looks invisible unless you're clairvoyant. And then you can see the energy, and you can see the way that it creates a cycle and all this stuff. So plasma is the spiritual science of the future that some people can bring into the present. And now, because the gates of heaven and hell have both been opened, we are starting to see heaven drop down to us, and hell rise up to meet us. So we're in the middle, and I suggest that you not consider plasma balls and plasmoids UFOs, but you consider them a vehicle of the spirit.